morning. Welcome to Front Porch Conversations here at Advent Christian Village. We're at the Harmony Center today, and our guest is Traci Nissley. Traci, welcome.
Welcome.
And Traci is the minister of music for the Advent Christian Village Church, the Village Church, correct?
Correct.
And how long have you been in that position?
I am wrapping up my 6th year. I moved on Memorial Day weekend.
Well, it's almost the anniversary of the move. Traci, tell us a little bit about your early life, and we'll get through your whole life before this is over.
Early life.
Where were you born?
I was born in Hialeah, Florida, Miami, Florida. And my parents moved to Georgia when I was 3, in Lilburn, Georgia, which is near Stone Mountain Park. And that is where I grew up. I am a product of Gwinnett County Schools. From elementary school, middle school, and high school. Graduated from Parkview High School. And my first college, I went to DePaul University in Chicago. And then I transferred to Toccoa Falls College. And I got my master's at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary in Wake Forest.
And tell us where Toccoa Falls is.
Oh, sorry, Toccoa Falls is in Northeast Georgia, Toccoa, Georgia.
And I think there's several people here who are graduates of the village of
There is, actually. That's been fun to reacquaint ourselves with them. Kevin, my husband, knows more of them because he worked there a long time before he met me.
Traci, you were sharing with me an early childhood memory that you said was lots of fun. What was that one? About on the roof?
Oh, because we lived near Stone Mountain Park. For the 4th of July and stuff, we would go to the top of our street and climb on our neighbor's roof so that we could watch the fireworks for like all the 4th of July celebrations. When they moved there in the 70s, 78 was just a 2-lane highway. And by the time my parents retired, 78 was a 6-lane highway with interchangeable center lanes. Yes. All right, so we were at so they grew, so I grew up in Lilburn, Stone Mountain, which gave me a lot of opportunities within music because it's right near Atlanta. And so that's where I started beginning my musical career.
And share with us when you started that.
I started teaching myself, there's 2 different kind of stories you look at. I started teaching myself music on my own. My dad played the organ, and I would mimic what he was playing, copy what he was playing. So my parents sought out to find me a teacher. Well, Elaine Newell was my first organ teacher, and she did not take young children because they were never serious enough. But she took me because I showed her I was dedicated because I was such a small child that I could not sit on the bench and actually reach the pedals in the organ. But I would wedge myself with the front of the organ bench, and my right leg would be against the back of the organ, and that would prop myself and web myself up so that I could play the pedals with my left foot. And she said, if she's that dedicated, then I will teach her. So I started doing that.
And you were how old?
I was 8 years old. Then I switched to piano at 11 because she said I needed to learn technique. Because with the organ, no matter how hard or soft you play, the note comes out. So I needed to learn technique, so she switched me to piano. And it was around that time that I started doing French horn and band, and that was the instrument I chose. I actually wanted to play the tuba, but remember, I was a small child, so my mom wanted me to play the flute. And I said, everybody plays the flute. So we compromised on the French horn.
That's what I'd call a compromise. And you still play the French horn?
I still play the French horn. Those were my main instruments I've studied. In college, French horn was my scholarship instrument, and that's how I played with all the ensembles with that. I did not study piano because I supplemented my income and student, loans and stuff by accompanying students, and I figured that was plenty of practicing because I would accompany anywhere from 20 to 30 students. And the organ became my minor instrument, so I continued that.
Well, I'm glad you have had all that experience and are sharing it with us here at the village. When did you said you and Kevin met when you were in college?
Yes. He was working as the bus driver and the sound technician, and being that I played soccer for the college and I was part of the choir and did musical all the musical activities. He would run the sound, and he would drive the bus, so we just got to know each other that way.
And now you're going to be celebrating your which anniversary?
We just celebrated our 24th anniversary.
That's a milestone. Congratulations.
It is.
And you have children.
We have 3 children. Eli is our oldest. He just graduated college with his associate's degree. His degree is in theater and entertainment technologies. He loves every aspect of the theater that is not on stage acting. But he has found his passion in stage management, and he just got his first job as an assistant stage manager in Kentucky. And then
Where did he go to school?
He went to school at Santa Fe College in Gainesville, Florida, and he was accepted at multiple different universities, but Santa Fe's degree was the most well-rounded, that prepared him for all the other aspects that could happen off stage. So that's what he did. And he got his associate's degree because, in his words, he did not want to do all the nonsense core classes.
Sounds like a young man.
And then Benson is our middle child. He is a sophomore in high school. And he, if you talk to him, has his life planned out already. And his goal is to take over the family business in Ohio, which is excavation and dump truck. And that has been his goal since he was a toddler. And so his goal immediately is to graduate with high school, with his high school diploma and his associate's degree at the same time. Sierra is our youngest. She is in 7th grade, and she is affectionately known as Princess Diva. She is affectionately known as Princess Diva. She is, if you talk to her for the longest time in her life, she's always wanted to be a teacher and a mama. She loves anything arts and crafts, anything home-style-y, anything. She has the gift of hospitality, and I consider her, she's like a little mini, like Martha Stewart type. I did not get that gene, but she did. So we usually try to encourage her to do that.
And how does her divaness show out? Well, we can skip that question.
We can skip that question. I don't think she would want me to express out her divasness. No. Okay, hold on. Her divasness comes out because she wants everything to be done perfect. So if she's going to host a party, it all needs to be perfect. If you're going to go out, she oftentimes is like, Mom, what are you wearing? Because it needs to be perfect. Your hair needs to be perfect. And that's what she strives for, which is a good thing to strive for. But again, I did not get that gene. I'm like, I'm here, that's great. And she's like, but. And so there are oftentimes she'll come to church because I'm leaving for church, and the ladies enjoy watching her get ready in front of the mirrors because you have to be presentable at all times. So that's but she has one of the kindest hearts, and her motivation in presenting the best package that she can is not one that is of conceit. It's actually one that is of coming from a kind heart, wanting to show you that you are important enough to her that she wants to give you her best.
And that's a wonderful heart to have for people. So. When you applied to work at the Village, that was not your first experience with the Village, right?
No, it was not.
Will you share with us?
I have been coming to the Village to visit since the 80s. My grandparents were Alvin Lee and Mary Bishop, and they retired just outside the Village of Butterfield Acres, and as well as my Aunt Helen and Uncle Win and Aunt Gladys, and they all lived in Butterfield Acres, and they retired and were members of the Village. And we would come down, because we were in Georgia, once a month. My grandparents, Alvin Lee and Mary Bishop, were the first managers of the Twice Nice. And Paul Maury Carter asked them to do it and give at least 1 year, which turned into more. But
Probably many more.
Many more. But that also fostered a growth in me, because in the Twice Nice, the original Twice Nice, they had all the shopping, and the back room is where they would sort. And my mom would go and help sort all that stuff, and I'd go to the village grocer and get snacks, or we'd go to what was the Mary Morsel Cafe, and my dad would always get banana splits. And they had in the one side was called the book nook. Mm-hmm. And in the book nook, as my grandparents went through all the books, they gave me all of the music history and composer books that they found. They gave me all of the Bibles that they found, because I loved having the old Bibles. Mm-hmm. And then they gave me all of their hymnals. So they started my collection of hymnals through the book nook.
And do you have all those still?
I do.
They've moved many times.
They have moved many times. And so
to forward to today, you still have someone living at the village, or a member of the village?
I do. My mom and my aunt actually retired first to the village and retired to the house where my grandparents lived in. And my mom and dad bought the lot next door. So my mom is still in Butterfield Acres.
And I believe she enjoys coming to see you on Sundays.
She does. She's my biggest fan.
Would you describe for our viewers what a Sunday morning is like in your life getting ready for church?
Okay. Well, I am honest, so let me tell you how my morning goes. In the morning, I wake up probably about 6:30. That's the latest I could do without being rushed. Then that gives me a half hour to get ready. Then I get our lunch ready, because I usually take it over to my mom's on the way to church so that it can be done and we can have lunch afterwards. I begin the wake-up calls for my children at 7. None of my children like to wake up easily in the mornings, which is normal. Mm-hmm. So wake-up calls at 7, and then 7:30, and then 7:45. And then I say, I am leaving, because I like to get to the church around 8 o'clock. I've learned, for me, I need to get to the church before everybody else does, because then I can get all of my things ready, so that as other people come in, people come to church already with concerns on their mind, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. And if I haven't gotten my stuff completed, then I will not be able to give them the attention that they need. So I like to get together and get all of my stuff together, and then that's at 8. Then at 8:30 is when the instrumentalists practice. We go through all of our transitions. Then at 9 o'clock, the choir is practicing. Then at 9:30 is our break time, and I try to encourage them. I know I fail sometimes. I try to encourage them to go out and talk to people and, fellowship in that couple 5 minutes. And then the service starts at 9:40. And then after that is Sunday school. And then that's our Sunday morning. We eat lunch. Then I have the pleasure of doing a live, so that means I need to come back up to the church at 3 o'clock so I can prepare, because Regeneration and Young Musicians meet from 4 to 5, and then a live is 5 to 6:30.
And then you get to go home and go, right?
Then I get to go home and say, has everybody completed their homework that is due for tomorrow, or did you procrastinate like a normal person?
Traci, I think watching the programs you've planned, you just have a tremendous gift of putting things together in such a way that's so spiritual and so worshipful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But the truth of the matter is I don't say this tritely, but that is God. Because if you were to go into my room, you would see how unorganized and crazy it is. But from the moment I start planning, I was like, you've got to put together this program, God, and you've got to arrange it. And I have learned over the years, if something doesn't happen, then there's probably a good reason for it. and something unexpected happened, again, there's probably a good reason for it, that God is ministering it and orchestrating it so that, the message that he wants people to hear, whether it's just one person or whether it's the entire group, there's a message that I believe he wants to send out, and I trust him completely to get that done.
Thank you for that. That was a beautiful testimony. But let's go back to the beginning of when you first heard about a call.
All right, first heard a call. I guess that started in high school. I have to go back. High school. In 13, during one of our summer, I know that's not high school yet. But at 13 is when I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior. And that was during one of our in the summer times we would do Camp Sunday campaigns. So every Sunday evening would be a camp service. And we had, I grew up at the Methodist Church actually, and we had Dr. Cornelius Henderson, and he came and he was preaching, and that's when I accepted Christ as my Savior. Then in high school, I was just as busy as I am now. It's just more self-absorbed busyness. But I would do stuff within the church and stuff within music, stuff with, just within the community. And in high school, my heart began reaching out to other people and seeing the need for that they just needed love. In fact, there was a period of time in my youth group that my church friends were concerned about me because I had a lot of friends that were not Christian. Acquaintances, and I went and I talked with the youth pastor at the time, who was Greg Boone, and I said, they're getting upset with me, but aren't we supposed to be hanging out with them and witnessing to them? And how are we supposed to witness to them if we never talk with them or hang out with them? And he looked at me and he said, you're absolutely right. He said, Jesus did that. He hung out with the sinners. He hung out with the outcast. He said, but he also remained with his faithful group of disciples that kept him grounded. I said, but aren't I doing that? I was so scared that I wasn't. And he goes, you are, because I was involved with the youth leadership, involved with the church ministries. And he said, just keep doing what you're doing. And he goes, this is what you do, this is what you do. And so I guess it began at that time. But when I went to college, I studied French horn performance at DePaul University, and my career was just headed to go play in a major symphony. That's what I was going to do. And I started being tugged more of going into missions again, and that was a very spiritually educational year, because the reality is throughout that whole college year, I did not have a single Christian friend until 3 weeks before school was out. And once I made that friend, I was like, oh, but there was a whole growth spiritually that was happening in that realization of, as Greg Boone said, you need to be grounded and surrounded. So I didn't know how I was going to break it to my parents that I was not going to study music, that I wanted to go study missions. So instead I talked to my granddaddy, who still lived in Butterfield Acres, and I said, Granddaddy, this is what's happening. And his response to me was, well, it's about time you started listening to God. We've all known this. So I said, okay. And so I told my parents, and they're like, okay. They weren't surprised whatsoever. So at Toccoa, I actually started Toccoa Falls College as a missions major. And we went as a brass quintet to do a missions trip down in Peru. We met up with missionaries, Tim and Mary Hickson. And Tim played with our brass quintet. And Mary was a music major as well. And Mary was talking to me, and she said, you can do missions with any major. So she encouraged me that when I came back to Toccoa to change my degree to go back into the missions, go back into music, she goes, because then if God calls you to missions, you can apply music to the missions. So that's what I did. I went back to Toccoa Falls and changed my degree to church music.
And that's how you've been employed.
How I've been employed. After we got married, after I graduated, I started as a substitute pianist and organist for all of Northeast Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So the churches would call me and say, we need somebody to play piano or organ. And I'd go and play. We need somebody to play. And it kept me busy going everywhere. And then my first full-time job as a minister of music was after seminary, and we moved to Manteo, North Carolina, in the Outer Banks. We were there for 7 years until we moved here. I mean, that's right now where Benson and Eli consider home, was in Manteo, North Carolina, especially Eli, because that was his whole formative elementary age years. And then from Manteo, we moved to Stone Mountain again. Kevin got a job doing audio visual at the hotel in Stone Mountain Park. And from there, we moved down to Tarpon Springs, Florida. He worked in Tampa at one of the hotels in downtown Tampa doing audiovisual, and I was working at Tarpon First United Methodist Church. Then my mom called me and said, Rosemary has retired. And I was like, what? That blew my mind, because Rosemary is one of the ones that I would go and visit to do my observation hours with church music. And church ministry, music ministry. I would go and observe Rosemary and learn from her, and a couple of times. And she was always gracious. Let me follow her. So I had applied to come here. Now, it was 2 years after she retired, but I still came.
Traci, thank you for sharing that. What have you learned in this community? That are things that
you'll have to cut. I can't.
I did not. I don't know where that question came from.
Some of the experiences I've learned, I cannot share.
She's learned how to con people into doing whatever she wants.
It's called voluntold. No.
Yes, she's really good at that.
I think we should leave that part in.
Donald says I have learned how to voluntold people very well. I have to say, things that I have learned really is a culmination of everything I've learned in all of my educational classes and all my previous jobs. I can look back and tell you what Tarpon First United Methodist Church, what Manteo United Methodist Church, what playing in all the different churches, what each and every one of them prepared me for in coming here. Every single one of them had a role, and I've had an experience in that. I have also, it seems to me, not that I have mastered it, but I think I'm really starting to learn the balance of how, for me, my family is first. God called me to be a mama. That's first and foremost. And He's also called me to be a music minister, but I'm really responsible for the raising of my children and preparing them to be Christians in this world. And so I've been able to, being here, still devote that time. The village has given me the freedom to minister to my family as needed, as well as ministering to the people here, which has been nice. I've also, as a friend here says, developed the ability to not just, we jokingly call it voluntold, but God has enabled me to learn more how to notice people's gifts and how to encourage them to use those gifts for His glory. And how to say, oh, you like to do this obscure little thing? Well, guess what? I can use it. Mm-hmm. And we can use that and encourage them to do that.
And from my experience of working here and living here, there is such a wealth of talent.
There is.
And generosity and people wanting to share their talents.
There is.
Sometimes we do need to be voluntold. But
we do need to be voluntold because we're scared to step out. We're scared. Even I'm scared. Like I said, I don't like to be the front person and in the limelight. I really don't. I like to support people. I like to see them succeed. Yeah.
But I just truly believe that some people will step out when asked and not otherwise. And we should all remember that. And never hesitate to ask somebody.
I agree. One thing that I've learned with that same mindset, it's not necessarily that they don't want to do it. They don't want to step out and take somebody else's place.
That's a good.
They want to be asked, one, because they know for certain that they're needed. And the other reason is they want to be asked because somebody else was doing it, and they don't want to take that limelight. They don't want to have the comparing factor. But in reality, we can all do it together.
That's right. And that's what I think God intended, that we be a community and do things together. So Traci, you have a wonderful laugh. What makes you laugh?
Oh, what makes me laugh? The silliest, craziest little things that are not that important, it seems. Life is funny. I think God had a crazy sense of humor. I mean, we do stupid stuff all the time. All the time. And, if you can't laugh at it, I love how my mama says, if you're not laughing, you're going to cry. Everything's fixable. You still will have to, as I have growing up, and I would do something stupid. She's like, that was a very stupid thing to do. It is funny. We'll laugh at it later. Now you need to deal with the consequences, but we can have fun as we do that.
And if somebody else said to you, well, you are the music director in a church in a retirement community, you have a lot of interaction with young people too, right?
I do. I love the young people. They are challenging, and they speak their minds, and they speak the truth. But I've also had opportunity now through my children mostly, but I also help out with the middle school music program and the high school music programs. Whether it's just accompanying the students or accompanying the choir or just being that moral support of, you got this. It's good.
Well, thank you for your good attitude and great service here and dedication. Thanks for visiting with me today. And thanks for joining us today, and we hope you'll tune in for another Front Porch Conversation.